I think it was Aiden from Uniswap who made me realize that if you replace blockchain by server, a lot of the world actually makes more sense. Ethereum is one type of server. Solana is another type of server. Darknet is another type of server. And you don't expect these servers to have the same security or the same performance depending on the application. On your phone, logging into your banking app, for example, you don't expect the same security than you would if you're opening Candy Crush. And so that's really the same mentality about blockchains. They don't all require the same security and resilience. Now, Obol is in the business of securing the most decentralized, the most secure network out there. And obviously, it does have market fit. Today, it secures like the most stable coins. For example, if you're serious about moving very large sum of money, that's where you're operating. So I think Ethereum, until it's defeated, still has very much that moat of being the most secure, the most trusted place for people to transact large sums of money.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic from 4RC. Today's show spotlights the largest decentralized operator ecosystem in Ethereum and Web3 called Obol. In this episode, we discuss how Obol helps scale infrastructure for Ethereum, how much decentralization is enough, and why security still matters. Plus, we'll cover more on how the new Obol token will power governance, operations, and incentives within the Obol collective. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge Podcast possible. Hey folks, I wanted to tell you a bit about our sponsor, Pyth Oracles, your go-to source for smarter data to power smarter contracts. Pyth delivers real-time market data for crypto, equities, FX, and commodities to over 80 blockchains. With 120 plus major market participants like Jane Street, Binance, and CBOE, Pyth ensures secure, low-latency feeds trusted by 430 DeFi apps. You can learn more about Pyth by going to pyth.network, and thanks to the Pyth community for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge newsletter. Overwhelmed trying to manage your crypto and DeFi investments? Meet iYield, a free financial planning tool for crypto natives and yield farmers. iYield's dashboard compares returns from your DeFi positions side by side, providing clarity to help you make better decisions. iYield supports a growing list of over 16,000 tokens and 40 of the top DeFi and staking protocols across 17 blockchains, including Ethereum L2s. The best part is that iYield is 100% free, anonymous, and there are no ads. Check out iYield.com today to take control of your financial future. Hey folks, I want to tell you a bit about our sponsor, Hourglass, the protocol unlocking liquidity for time-bound tokens. With Hourglass Boost, you can time boost your assets and earn time-bound tokens that maximize your yield. Alternatively, Hourglass also enables leveraged airdrop farming, where you can get over 150x leverage and 10% more points than anywhere else in DeFi. Plus, thanks to their slippage-free market design, you can secure bigger airdrops at better prices. To learn more about Hourglass, go to hourglass.com. Launching your blockchain in months? That's so 2020. Launch your network in minutes with Tansi infrastructure. Restaked security through Symbiotic, plus full customization just a few clicks away. It's 2025. Build smarter, scale faster. Visit Tansi.network to get started. Meet Definitive, the most advanced on-chain trading platform across every chain. Built by Coinbase alumni, Definitive's institutional-grade features lets anyone trade like a pro, featuring advanced order types like limit, twop, and stop loss, gasless trading, one-time approvals, and soon cross-chain swaps for multi-chain EVM and Solana. Definitive routes your orders through every liquidity pool to get you the best price on every trade. The alpha is on-chain. Trade it instantly on Definitive. For Edge Podcast listeners, enjoy zero trading fees on your first $50,000 in volume at defidad.definitive.fi.
Bitcoin Layer 2s are everywhere, but Goat Network is different. We're the first to use decentralized sequencers, letting both Bitcoin and Dogecoin secure our network while earning native yield. No nonsense, just your assets working smarter. Our early supporters got it, with over 8 million committed in December alone and already earning returns. Next up, mainnet launch in Q1 of 2025. Goat Network, where Bitcoin scaling meets real yield. Visit goat.network, get involved, and start earning sustainable yield.
All right, let's introduce Toma, the CEO of the Obol Association. Toma, welcome to the Edge podcast. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to talk all about the Obol Collective. The Obol Collective is the largest decentralized operator ecosystem in Ethereum. This is going to be an interesting conversation because it comes to us against a backdrop, I think, where the crypto community has, in many ways, demonstrated to us that there are lots of folks that don't care about decentralization. So we're here to shine a light on why this matters and the important work that you guys are doing in scaling infrastructure networks like Ethereum. Why don't we just get right into more about the problem that you're solving, why you guys went about building Obol?
Cool. Yeah, no, I think decentralization is very important and very proud of the work we're doing as building this largest decentralized operator ecosystem. So essentially, it's a set of tools, opportunities, technologies that allows to scale any blockchain or network. The first use case we had of that was distributed validators, which are scaling very rapidly on Ethereum these days. And so I like to think about distributed validators in a bit of a safe multisig that I think a lot of people are actually quite familiar with how a safe multisig works. Let's say it's a 3 out of 4. If one of your keys is missing, or if your ledger is being compromised, or if that person responsible for that key traveling, 3 out of 4 signatures can still go through for whatever transaction you're trying to push, right? So distributed validators sort of bring that use case, but for the validators in proof-of-stake networks. So your validator typically runs on one machine, whether it's at home as a solo stakers, which are super important for Ethereum, or it's maybe in a data center. But there is all sort of things that happen to machines that are running the critical infrastructure that Ethereum and other networks. Sometimes those data centers can go offline. I think we had a case recently of a Lido operator, which data center in South Africa just had no internet for 24 hours. Or you might have a country that's banning a certain cloud provider. You might get a bug in one of the software part of your node stack, like Geth or Nethermind, or you might just have like a rogue actor. And so by splitting basically your validator key across several machines, you're really bringing that resilience and security to your validator so that it stays online, keeps accruing rewards, and actually just makes the network more resilient at the end of the day.
Hey, Toma, maybe just if you can define a couple terms there, operator versus validator, maybe just quickly, like how do they differ? How are they similar? How do they work together?
So, and I actually remember when I joined Obol, I was actually struggling with those terms. So it's a totally fair question. So an operator, I like to think about the human running machines. So that's, we have about 300 operators in Lido, same number in EtherFi. So these are the humans running the infrastructure powering distributed ledgers and blockchain. A validator, I like to think about the machine itself that's being run by the operator. And in proof of stake, that's typically a piece of software that's running on a machine that requires you to bond or stake a certain amount of a crypto asset. So in the case of Ethereum, that's 32 ETH, which is still a fairly high barrier for a lot of people to start with. And that's also what distributed validators and squad staking allow, is to split that high barrier between a number of operators that can share the responsibility of running that validator then.
And then, Toma, you were starting to kind of tell us the high level about what this Obol Collective is, but maybe dive into that a bit more for us. And then can you also like just delineate, you're part of the Obol Association, and I think there's also an Obol Lab. So how do these all kind of work together? How are those different as well?
So the Obol Collective is a set of, I like say, humans that are coordinating around that shared vision of creating a decentralized operator ecosystem. So the humans plus the technology make the collective. As part of the key humans, I'd say, so I'm in charge of the Obol Association, which manages everything around the token that we just announced and did a big airdrop. We can dive into that a bit later. We're in charge of all the governance. We're in charge of compliance, and in general, to keep Obol itself decentralized. Otherwise, we cannot serve the purpose that we're trying to do, is to decentralize other networks. Another big part, obviously, of the collective is Obol Labs, which is more the dev shop that has built the original technology supporting the Obol collective. So that's very similar to, in Arbitrum, for example, you have the DAO and you have Off-Chain Labs, which would be the labs entity behind. Now, Obol Labs isn't like the only set of dev shop helping the collective. We also have, for example, Nethermind, which has done a lot of research for us. And it's very important, and that was really the ethos of the collective for us, is to create a flywheel effect where many participants can participate, contribute, and then we can dive into this a bit later, but also then get rewarded for participating in the collective. This is something I personally really like from Optimism Retro RPG. And so we're running similar retroactive rounds for the members that are participating, that are contributing to the collective, whether that's codes like the labs and Nethermind, whether that's like educators like yourself. We have like College DAO helping and spread the words about distributed validators. There is all sort of things that people can do to contribute to the collective.
So we've done a number of other podcasts on folks that I would consider like, colleagues, partners to Obol, like EtherFi, EigenLayer. We've covered Lido quite a bit in Yields of the Week. I mean, Lido is everywhere. Maybe you can like draw out, how do these different players all work together in order for the Ethereum network to run? Like, we've got proof of stake, and we know that you're a key component to the network running and scaling. Whatever you can do to like do the like LE5, description of this, like explain it to us like we're five.
That's a good question. And then the staking landscape has evolved quite a bit, and along with DeFi 1.0, I'd say it's probably one of the most mature space today in crypto. And most people don't really know about all of it and the different actors. So I think that's a fair question, but it's actually fairly mature. And I see it really being on this path where you see Bitcoin miners today being like very professionalized, right? You have these like massive farms being run by suits. Really. I hope Ethereum doesn't get there. But these like infrastructure plays are really getting very professional and mature. So if you look at the Ethereum landscape for staking, we can probably differentiate like a few actors. So on the first end, you first have your staker. So that's someone that holds ETH that's interested in getting yield in it, potentially even additional yield through staking. And so they have a number of protocols, liquid staking or restaking protocols they can choose to stake with to secure Ethereum and get rewards for providing their capital. So that's where your Lido and EtherFi fit. They pool this capital and then they deploy it on the backend on staking infrastructure. This is where we come in. What is that staking infrastructure? Well, these are operators, as I said, like different humans than EtherFi or Lido. These are like professional node operators that are running machines across different parts of the globe, different data centers, at home, solo stakers, etc. And then as part of running your stack for the pool like Lido or EtherFi, you run a number of software pieces. You have the consensus layer, execution layer. Everyone knows and loves that we have a lot of diversity there on Ethereum across the different clients. And then you can also run that little piece of middleware that's called Charon, and that's the Obol distributed validator middleware. So it's just like a sidecar, a bit in the same way that MEP Boost is, and provides also like additional or optimized rewards for running that validator stack to stakers, and then increases the yield of the Lidos and EtherFi, makes them more appealing, and create that flywheel effects between all the different actors.
Thomas, with all that being said, how does this impact Ethereum, or why is this important for Ethereum?
So Ethereum has one big advantage over the rest of decentralized networks out there, and that's its decentralization. It doesn't have speed. It doesn't have any of the other bells and whistles really that the super fast other L1s are offering, but it has something very important, which is decentralization. And something that Anthony Sazzano always says is, why does even decentralization matter? That's for being incredibly neutral. That's for anyone being able to run the software and make sure that transaction can go through without being censored or is transaction not landing for one reason or another. It's a very high and noble vision. And I think decentralization is not necessarily for everyone. Some use cases like the BlackRock of this world care a lot about decentralization. But if you're talking about meme coin trading or an active game, you might be better doing that on Starknet or Solana. And I think a lot of the industry gets hung on the word blockchain. And I think it was Aiden from Uniswap who made me realize that if you replace blockchain by server, a lot of the world actually makes more sense. Ethereum is one type of server. Solana is another type of server. Starknet is another type of server. And you don't expect these servers to have the same security or the same performance depending on the application. On your phone, logging into your banking app, for example, you don't expect the same security than you would if you're opening Candy Crush. And so that's really the same mentality about blockchains. They don't all require the same security and resilience. Now, Obol is in the business of securing the most decentralized, the most secure network out there. And obviously, it does have market fit. Today, it secures like the most stable coins. For example, if you're serious about moving very large sum of money, that's where you're operating. So I think Ethereum, until it's defeated, still has very much that moat of being the most secure, the most trusted place for people to transact large sums of money.
So one of the arguments that we've all seen happen on Twitter specifically is around decentralization. There's always been a debate between, I think, the Bitcoin maxi camp and Ethereum, and then there's been like a debate within like the Ethereum camp that goes to Solana, and then I think Solana is fighting with Ethereum and multiple other communities, and actually everyone's got their spears aimed at Ethereum. And so there's this argument that, you know, one of the real benefits to Ethereum is how decentralized it is. But one of the reasons people get into these arguments, and it's so frustrating, is I think it's difficult to measure decentralization. It's not like market cap or like a price that we can point to. So like, how do we measure decentralization, and like how much decentralization is enough? Because otherwise I feel like the work that you guys are doing in other teams, it goes unappreciated if we don't have something to measure that success by.
That's a good question. So I think the Nakamoto coefficient is one way to look, right? What is the lowest number of entities that need to be compromised for the blockchain to go down? So Ethereum is very high there. Obviously, you would need to compromise or attack a very large number of independent entities or parties. So that's an interesting one. Now, to back to what I was saying, I think there will be use cases for things that need to be very decentralized and others that don't necessarily need to be. The very same way then on your phone, you have some apps that you expect to be very secure and others that you don't mind if you lose your data. That's maybe why you're using like a secondary email that's full of spam, right? We all have like our serious email and the sort of compromised one already. So I think about the same way about blockchains. Some apps, and today that's like very heavy DeFi, large sum of money do require that decentralization, and other things like gaming and meme coin trading might not require it. Now, the good thing about Obol is it doesn't necessarily only focuses on Ethereum and scaling Ethereum. Like that's where we started. That's because the staking industry is the most mature there. But the way I like to think about it is just shifts the decentralization curve for everyone. So, for example, we recently announced distributed validators on Monad, which is going to be pretty centralized on day one, right? But by introducing the distributed validators, they're already shifting their entire curve. And that's really what a network can do. It's just shift that entire curve from centralized to decentralized. So that's quite interesting because it's sort of an easy win that doesn't necessarily compromise any of the other aspects of your super fast blockchain, let's say, but does improve the reliability or the security. Something else to remind people when it comes to decentralization, it's actually not something that's very new. We like to think that decentralization is Web3 invented. But when you're connecting to a website, there is actually multiple instances of that running on AWS or Google Clouds, and there are duplicates of those. So that if one of those servers goes down, then you still have high availability. And that's really what we try to do with Obol, is replicate this actually very old and battle-tested high availability of servers out there powering different networks, and to bring that to all of the stack of blockchain. And that's just like very standard technology already.
This episode is brought to you by Mantle, the ultimate Ethereum L2 for builders. With over $2.16 billion in TVL, Mantle powers multi-billion-dollar yield-bearing assets like CMETH and FBTC, driving sustainable growth and capital efficiency. Plus, Mantle offers a unique reward station for airdropping different tokens to MNT holders, including one ongoing campaign for 4 million Athena tokens and another for 570,000 Eigen. To learn more, go to mantle.xyz, and thanks to Mantle for supporting us at the Edge Podcast and Edge newsletter.
Toma, one thing I wanted to ask you too is, I don't know if this is like a general consensus, but maybe it's just my own personal thoughts. But is there typically a trade-off with decentralization where you typically have to sacrifice speed and latency in order to get decentralization? Or are there cases where, and maybe with what you're doing, where decentralization can actually be used to enhance or even compete on the same kind of playing field as something that's more centralized? Does that make sense?
I think that's fair. And I would have said yes until maybe 3 to 4 months ago, where it was an obvious trade-off, speed versus decentralization. Now, one thing that actually gets me super excited is a recent push by Justin Drake about native and base rollups, where you can basically get the full decentralization of Ethereum through its data availability layer, and then scale a shit ton, let's say, the speed on like a native rollup that's also sequenced by DL1. And he's able to explain that way better than me, and I won't go deeper on this because I'm not an expert. But you could have this like mega rollup, like Mega Eve, or others that are trying to really become that super fast execution piece. And then you still have the consensus that's super decentralized. And I think that's what's genius about Ethereum, by always separating like the consensus layer and the execution layer, is that then they don't have to compete. And so far, they were sort of progressing on different timelines, but with native and based sequencing, they're starting to converge. And I think this might be the unlock that Ethereum is looking in terms of reconciling speed and decentralization.
Toma, has it been difficult pushing for decentralization? Like, I feel like there's been a louder narrative building that, again, decentralization matters less. I don't think people are actually saying they don't care about it, but they're very vocal about just wanting to be able to transact at cheap prices, being able to transact as quickly as possible. And I guess like I want to call out, like, what's funny is Ethereum mainnet has actually gotten cheaper and faster, mainly because of the fact that there's just less traffic there, and we've seen more traffic move to the L2s. But yeah, like I know it's something that we value, having been in the space. Like, we know that like we're in a bull run where, everything seems to work. Every idea is guaranteed to work in the eyes of a lot of investors. But then the bear market is where like the reality hits, and then folks become more pessimistic and stop pricing in so much of the future into tokens. So, I still feel like the guarantee of being able to transact without it being censored, knowing that the network is not able to be taken down, like, these are things that we value if you've been in the space for years. So anyways, what's it like pushing for decentralization through Obol?
One of the things that I think the industry got wrong, and that's typical when it started by ideologues, which are nerds and engineers, is that it focuses on features rather than value. And I think the word decentralization was actually a mistake, because decentralization is a feature. It doesn't tell you anything about what this brings. And now everyone's talking about decentralization, but listening to your question, I agree, it's not clear why decentralization matters. And so we've talked about censorship resistance. I think that's one that's very important, but you might need to be like in a country where you don't have like easy banking needs, or you might be living under a difficult political situation. And to be fair, that's 2/3 of the world that I think most people don't realize. But even if we exclude this group of people, the other big value driver besides censorship resistance is actually just security. We should just say that blockchains are secure, and you want the blockchain that you're using to be secure. So Obol is in the business of setting security more than decentralization. That's the value that we're setting. And security is actually something that's very easy to do business around. The one big area that people are really interested in getting very secure stake is the ETF. Everyone knows stake ETF are around the corner. We're expecting these to be approved this year, next year. I don't know. I'm not even in the US, but everyone's looking at these things. Well, from a regulator's perspective, security is all that matters, actually. They don't really care about anything else or speed or anything. So for a regulator like the SEC, seeing technologies like Obol actually does make sense. All it does is actually spread the risk, reduces the reliance on one operator, and spreads it across several ones, so that if one goes rogue, like they can't go with all of the funds away. So setting security is actually not that hard. But the one thing that I say is probably not as sexy as selling meme coins. That's for sure. But if you look at probably the total addressable market of security in the world, it's huge. People care about security very much, especially in this world where everything is digital these days.
The entire time I've been in this space, I honestly, and I don't know, maybe I've had my head buried in the sand, but I've never heard anybody kind of rebrand decentralization to security and make it make that much sense as you just did right now. Because I think if you're talking to like your parents or your friends or your family that aren't really in the space, and you start saying decentralization, in one ear, out the other, exactly. You say security, that immediately resonates. And I think it would go a long way to start using that term a little bit more than decentralization, to be honest. But Toma, one other question I had, just you mentioned you're kind of getting into the Monad ecosystem. Curious, like what about Solana, or like what about and any of these other big like Alt-L ones, and anything else you can tell us about kind of like the Obol expansion process here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with Ethereum, which is the largest staking blockchain out there, so the most stake to secure. And so you expect people to value security in a market that's higher value typically. If your blockchain is securing, 10 million TVL, it's going to be a hard sell for them to be paying for any extra security. So we started with Ethereum for that reason. Now, there does seem to be very emergent blockchains out there that are starting to secure a lot of value. Solana is definitely one. We've looked at the technology. It's a bit harder to adapt because they have this multi-proposer setup. And it's not just a copy-paste from the EVM or actually the consensus layer on our side that we could replicate much easier to EVM chains. So that's why we've looked at other like promising fast as well L2s or L1s. And so Monad there seems to be very promising. The other one that we're actually live on is Gnosis Chain. And they've also been doing a ton of good stuff there with their cards and focusing on the Euro stablecoins, etc., seeing their TBL increase quite nicely. And so Gnosis is another chain we've launched on. And then, we're always first letting the chain mature, because we realize like security is actually something valuable, but not valuable at the very start of a protocol. It's once you have something to secure, right, that you value security. And so seeing a bit where it plays out, but I do expect distributed validators to become a mainstream technology in the future. It's not even something that we invented, really. We just picked it up from Vitalik roadmap. He just had it there sitting, And I think that's what a lot of projects just do. They take a look at this roadmap. It's open for everyone, right? Like just pick one of these things and start working on it, and you can build a business around.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Gearbox, the protocol that reimagines on-chain lending. With Gearbox, you can access 10x credit across DeFi or lend for passive yields with single asset deposits and no impermanent loss. Users can access leverage to margin trade, stake, farm, and more. To learn more about Gearbox, go to gearbox.fi.
Egg. A quite astonishing commodity. The cause of your desire. Egg. Which fills the inner void. Egg.
Eggs are pretty epic, but you know what's more epic? Paying for them with crypto. Borrow, earn, and now pay with Moonwell.
Say hello to Puffer Unify. Puffer Finance is expanding beyond native liquid restaking with new products such as Unify-based rollup and Unify Pre-Confirmations AVS. Unify is not just another L2. Unify is a based rollup, one that will solve L2 issues, such as slow withdrawals versus instant withdrawals with Puffer Unify. Puffer Unify is fast, capable of sub-second transactions. Unify also has boosted Puffer points, which means if you bridge assets, you earn boosted Puffer points and rewards from dApps on Unify. Puffer's core products mean a bright future for Ethereum. Learn more at puffer.fi. So I think a lot of our listeners are, ultimately the folks that are using DeFi protocols, and your product suite is probably not one that they're going to be, interacting with firsthand. But I would love to go over at like a high level, like what does the Obol product suite look like?
Absolutely. And to be frank, I don't think they should be too familiar with it. And stakers are not necessarily our primary markets. We're doing B2B2C. Now, the way crypto incentives work, people actually love to bet or get rewards from the underlying protocols they're deploying their TVI. So I think that's actually valuable for them to learn on, but it's like saying, oh, do you want to know the difference between HTTPS and SCP before you're using this protocol on your phone? Well, you don't really care, do you? Now, if HTTPS or SCP is actually sending you extra rewards, then maybe you might care. So I think this is the route we're going with retail or and stakers, let's say capital providers. What we're offering is like programmatic incentives. We'll announce that soon, where you actually get like boosted rewards by staking with protocols that are leveraging Obol distributed validators. And what they're leveraging there is our middleware, that's Garon, like our client that's compatible with any other consensus or execution client. We have a number of like configuration tools for you to set up properly your distributed validators, and a number of tools as well to distribute rewards between the different operators to make sure everyone gets paid their fair share. Because when you distribute a validator, you're also distributing the reward. So we set a set of smart contracts there. But for end users, they will mostly learn about us by gaining access to Obol tokens, by staking with distributed validators. And then they gain that share and ownership in the collective. And we can also go deeper into what that means for them. Now, the one set of people that do actually work a bit closer with Obol are the solo stakers. We chatted a bit earlier about the importance of decentralization, the number of entities that need to be compromised, and solo stakers are this really last barrier, right, to the decentralization. They're the ones that are actually slowing down the network. They're like the lowest barrier that we're setting. And these people deploy Obol directly. So there is a set of users there that might know directly about Obol because they're running the software. They team up. We could, for example, the three of us could team up. We set up our validator as a distributed validator so that if one of us goes on vacation, it's on the beach, and the machine goes down, power outage in the building, your machine didn't restart, you're not rushing, trying to SSH into your server, hoping that you didn't miss the only block that you're going to propose this year for the juicy rewards. So there is still that cohort of people that are important and are interfacing on a daily basis with Obol. And that these people get actually recruited by the protocols like Lido, like EtherFi. And so that's what we mean when we say larger decentralized operator ecosystem. We're providing opportunities to these like home stakers and semi-professional people that know how to run hardware, access to very large pool of capital and to be running those for the operators. Prior to Obol and distributed validators, Lido only had 40 operators. And now with distributed validators, they 10x that, they have 400. And I think a lot of people don't know that, but I think that's also why probably Lido also gets less heat than they used to. They've actually decentralized a fair bit, and they've done that through distributed validators. Because they're able to include more operators, which we've certified through our technique credential, and do that at a very low risk. If one of them goes rogue, then they can't do anything with the funds really. And that's very reassuring for Lido. Otherwise, they had like these 30 or 40 people they trust, they give them the keys, and these people can run with the money. But in a distributed validator setup, they can't. And so that's why they brought like all these different people into the protocol. And I think this matters for the end stakers as well in the end. Like something that I've always loved was, when you used to buy a PC, you would have like Intel inside logo on like how many cores or Intel it said. And it just said how much, like that it was like a credibly good computer that was going to deliver some performance. And so I see a bit the same for end stakers that are choosing protocols, is to see like Obol inside, like built with distributed validators. And they know their stake is going to be protected, it's going to be more safe because it's run by a protocol that's more safe. So it does not only secure like the network in general, but the protocols and actually the money that people are putting at risk when choosing to stake their ETH.
Is this why like a Rocket Pool or Lido or EtherFi or solo stakers, is that like a good way to summarize why they would love Obol? It protects their stake. Is that the simplest way to put it?
It's twofold. I think protecting the stake is the first part, and the second part is increasing the number of node operators. That's their mission to all of them. Rocket Pool has always had a very large number of operators due to their 16 ETH. I think now it's 8 ETH with their Saturn upgrades. Don't quote me on it. Lido has always struggled there a little. And now with distributed validators, they can increase the number of operators. EtherFi started with 6 operators, and now they're also like tens of those thanks to their Operation Solo Stakers, etc. And so you have like little guys, let's say like you and me, that are running actually stake on behalf of Lido, on behalf of EtherFi. And that's like a very powerful story. And that legitimizes these protocols and make them more decentralized as well. Otherwise, if there is something like 4 operators in EtherFi, it's actually very easy for a regulator or anyone to take down. Back to what we were saying with the Nakamoto coefficient, it applies at the blockchain level, but also at the staking protocol you're choosing. If it's all operated by one person, it's super easy to take down or to be compromised or to be hacked, any of these things. So they're securing themselves and by actually increasing the number of node operators without adding risk, without adding to trust more humans, which is at the end what crypto, I hope, solves. Trust less humans and trust the technology instead. It's a quite sad of state of the world if you think about it, but it turns out that you can't trust humans in the long term. So maybe technology will do a better work. Yeah, that's a very good point. By having like more security and your validator more online and not missing rewards, that actually means your performance is actually increasing. So we were looking at this recently, and solo stakers that are part of Lido simple DBT module are actually, and that are operating distributed validators, are actually delivering more rewards and more performance than the curated professional operators. So that's like a super cool story. of like little guys teaming up actually deliver more performance. And so that means more rewards than the professional operators, thanks to distributed validators. And so what that means is if these machines are making more rewards, that ultimately flows back to the stakers. So that's a very good point to add to the list of why Lido or EtherFi would choose distributed validators is decentralization, security, but also performance. They actually do get better performance. And on top of that, we're also boosting the yield there by giving Obol rewards to those stakers.
We talked about a few things a little bit, but I want to kind of circle back to them and kind of going over your Twitter, the Obol Twitter here. I saw a few announcements come out about the Obol token, governance, and then as you mentioned earlier, this like retroactive funding. Maybe just kind of key in on all of those, how you're thinking through these things from at the association level, I guess.
Now, we're super excited to introduce the airdrop a few weeks back. I think the goal there is really to grant shared ownership in the future that we're building to the community. And there were 3 big groups that we decided to airdrop. The first one were the capital providers or the points program farmers, let's say. And they were the ones staking with Lido, with EtherFi, with Chorus, with Stakewise, any of our partners. And so they got about 40% of the airdrop. The second big group were the operators, so the people that have been working with us and that we've certified as like quality operators capable of running decentralized networks. And the last piece were the solo stakers, because too many of them are still running their machine alone at home, which introduces a lot of risk for themselves and the network. And so by airdropping like Rocket Pool and Lido CSM and just general solo stakers lists, we're hoping to convert them and bring awareness around the Obol token.
Toma, on the Obol token, what can you tell us about how it would operate within the Obol protocol?
So quite a few things here. I definitely wanted to build something for the community that's more than your useless governance token. I think the space has had enough of those. So the first part is actually still governance. That's the good part about tokens. So in our case, the governance is twofold. There is on one side your classic token governance for grants, for goal setting, for development of the ecosystem. But the second piece that I'm really excited that's actually running right now is our retroactive funding round, which is mirrored on Optimism Retro PGF. So there is about 45 projects that Obol token delegates can vote on at the moment that are all supporting public goods in distributed validators and in Ethereum in general. So that's like protocol guilds that's supporting research in Ethereum. That's like DApp nodes, which are giving like machines to run distributed validators. So all this good like public good stuff that I think is also a very nice side of the story of Ethereum. So Obol token holders can also vote on that. And then the second big piece will be those incentives and programmatic rewards that I talked about earlier that will help with the yield you get when you stake with protocols. And then the rest is sort of up to the community, to be honest. They're free to introduce proposals where they might want to see a revenue accrual mechanism. I think we saw a lot of that stuff happen recently after the Trump election. A lot of projects are pushing a proposal for a revenue accrual or burn mechanism or staking. So the race is sort of on in that space, looking forward to see what we can do also that's compliant, obviously, with the different regulations that come up in the US. But if the community has their ideas around that, they can pass a proposal and we'll do our best as the association to follow that through.
I would imagine you all have been, scrambling in a good way since the election. It feels like the floodgates have been opened in terms of new opportunity that wasn't there previously. I mean, it was a very difficult time for founders, not just in the US, but around the world, like feeling the pressures of the last administration. And honestly, prior to that, it was still pretty awful. Like there's always been this very pessimistic view within like the US government around crypto. And that seems to have just changed overnight. It's exciting. I'm hoping that we see more public raises here in the near future from, talented teams. But I think this is a good place for us to wrap up. So I want to remind our listeners that they can learn more about Obol by going to the Obol website at obol.org. They should follow Obol_collective on X or Twitter. Follow _Cryptoma. That's CRYPTOMA. That's Toma's personal account. And we'll put all of that into the show notes so you can easily find it. And then, Toma, just thank you so much for coming on and answering some very difficult questions. I want to just give you the final word on, anything else you'd like to share, any call to action for folks that want to get involved in Obol.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So 2 things. The first one is stake on DVs. That's the best you can do for Ethereum security. And the second one is we're very excited to soon be opening a CoinList community rounds. I think it's about time that we bring the community that's helping build these protocols with us on our success journey. So you can check our Twitter for the details and how you can participate in the rounds. And that will be exciting, hopefully leading to the full token unlock.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And to stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.